Today we'll be talking about percent and percent of problems. When you work with these, you will have three different pieces. You will have a percent represented as like a percent rate. Then you will have a part, and the part is going to stand out because it will be next to the words of like is, had, was, this. And then you're going to have a whole, and it's going to be of the whole. So you're going to take, like, let's just pretend 10% of 50 is 5. So we did this with estimation, but this time we're going to look at it and find the exact amounts. Now, what pieces will be considered a part if you're looking at a word problem? Your tax, tip, profit, commission, depreciation, discount, maybe the amount of questions you got correct or wrong on a test, and like withholdings. What pieces would be considered your wholes? Your sales, your cost before tax, and like your total number of questions on a test. Now, there are two ways to do this. I highly recommend that you do the proportion method. And so with the proportion method, you will use this setup no matter what questions you get. Where you find the word is, had, this, or was, that is going to entail that that is the part, as well as using analytics and understanding that these topics are all parts. That value would be put on top as the numerator. Then as the denominator, you would put whatever the value is that pertains to the whole. And you will spot this because most of the times it will have the word of, or like a total amount of sales. It will, again, pertain to, there were 44 questions on the test. That means the whole. So even though it doesn't have the word of, you're looking at whatever the whole is. And why is 100 down here and not in color? Because that is always going to be 100 down there, since percent is always out of 100. The proportion method is also expressed in what we used for estimation. Your part, so like 5, is 10% of 50. So this method works as well, but it has a lot of error. And the reason being is, for this one, you don't have to convert anything. You just put your percent that they give you right there. However, if you use this method, you have to remember when you plug in your percent that it must be converted to a decimal first. And that's where students have common error. So I don't recommend using this method except for when you have estimation. And I do recommend you use this. So I'm going to ask my students for this section to use method number 1, the proportion method, where I have my star. For this here, your is equals, and remember, of means multiply. So let's look at the first types of questions that we'll get. If you're asked for the percent rate of something, for example, what is the percent of 56 that is 224? What you do is you look at your proportion, and let's just break it down. What is your pink? That's the percent. So I'm going to put the percent. Okay, that's what's missing. That's where my variable is going to go. Then I find the word of. Of is the whole. And then I find my word is the part. Now I have my 3 pieces. I just simply have to set them up into the proportion method. So that means 224, that's the part, over the whole, which is 56, equals, we're missing the percent, and it's out of 100. At this point, now you do cross products. So that means 56x equals 100 times 224, means adding 2 zeros at the end. So 224 times 100 would get you 22,400. Now you must get x by itself. In order to do that, you're doing inverse operation. So divide by 56, divide by 56. That means your x equals 400, and do not forget, you need to have the percent sign. You are looking for the percent. And how do you remember to put the percent there? Notice next to the x, I put the percent on that. So that way you remember, if you're looking for the percent, you need the percent symbol. Next one is the same process. So let's see and try to identify. Let's go ahead and write out our proportion. We know it's going to be this. So right now I'm just going to fill in the pieces. Well, next to the word is, I see 12.5. So I'm going to put 12.5 as my part. What percent? That's what's missing. That's the variable. Of 1250. Of is the whole. So 1250 goes on the bottom. Now you do cross products. When you do cross products, you get 1250 x. Don't forget, we want the percent in our answer. So if you want, you can also do that. So you remember that the answer is a percent, equals 12.5 times 100. Well, again, times 100 means move the decimal twice. So that's going to end up being 1,250. Now I need to get the x by itself. So in order to get the x by itself, I'm going to divide by 1250, divide by 1250. That means that x equals 1%. And again, you must have the percent sign. So a word problem where you are needing the percent, and so the percent is not going to be given, that's going to be expressed as the variable, would be an example like this. You scored 18 out of 34 on a test. What was your percent grade? Well, right now, using estimation, that's not looking too good. That is almost half. So we already know our percent should be pretty close to 50% just by looking at it, because you think 18 out of, remember, out of means division. So since out of means divide, right now, again, what you scored is your part. So your scoring is the part, which means that's going to go on top. And your total number of questions, that is of 34. And then you're looking for your percent. Do you have to use color? No. Do I recommend it? Yeah, it helps. So 18 is your part over 34 equals your percent out of 100. All right, now you need to do cross products. So you know it's going to be 34x because, again, the variable goes there, so that's what we're missing. Don't forget your answer is going to be expressed as a percent. And that equals 18 times 100. That's 2 place values. So that's 1,800. Now you must get x by itself. In order to do that, you're going to divide by 34. Divide by 34, divide by 34. Your x then gets you 52.9%. That would not be an awesome score. That's not a score I would like. The next type of questions, you will be given the percent, you'll be given the part, and now you're looking for the whole. How will those look? Well, let's look at this example. 60 is 12% of what? So you notice the of what right there, that's what you're looking for. So the question will always tell you, whether it's a word problem or anything, what the variable is. Well, the of is right next to it. So now we know the x is actually going to be the variable for the whole. The is next to the number 60. And the percent is 12%. So this time we're looking for the denominator. Now let's plug in what we have. It's the same exact formula. 60 is your part, so that goes on top. Whole goes on the bottom, so that's where your x goes, equals 12% over 100. Now that you're here, you're going to do your cross product. So 12x equals 60 times 100. That's going to be 6,000. Now you must get x by itself. So you're going to divide by 12, and then your x equals 500. 500 is the answer. Again, we're looking for the whole, not the percent. So for this one, you should get a whole number or a decimal or a mixed number. You do not put the percent sign for these because only one number can be given the percent, and that is the rate, and that's already included. The x is for the whole. Let's look at another example so that the wording looks a little different. This time it says 40% of what number is 11. Same process. Is next to 11, so I'm going to put 11 on the top. Is 11 of what? There's my x. Of pertains to the whole, so the x goes on the bottom. And you're given 44%, and percent is always out of 100. Now that you have this, you do your cross product. So 44x equals 11 times 100, which is 1100. Now you need to get x by itself. So divide by 44, divide by 44, x equals 25. A word problem for this section. Mrs. V reads 9 novels. This represents 15% of what she needs to read annually. How many does she read in a year? How many does she have left to read since I've already read 9 novels? This is a 2-question problem. So the first thing you need to do is pull out your given. So let's look at what we see, and what I've read so far, I see the word this. This is the same as is. What if this is the second sentence in language arts? You can't start with this unless the sentence before specifies what this is pertaining to. So this tells you we're looking at the 9. So your 9 is your part. So sometimes they will not have is. They'll use this, had, was, other words like that. Okay, so now we know our part. Our percent is the easiest one because you'll see the percent sign. And then we need to find where it says of. Ooh, I see of what she reads annually. So that's the whole of whatever the amount I read annually. Beyond that, remember, the question also tells you what you're looking for, where the variable is. How many does she read in a year? Well, a year is annual. So we know that this has just justified that the whole is going to be the x, the variable. All right, so now let's first find out how many I've read in a year before we could figure out how many I have left. Okay, so in a year, we have your part equals 9, the whole equals the year equals x. That's what we got to figure out. And the percent, the rate, equals 15%. All right, so that means 9, since that's the part, goes over x, equals 15% over 100. Do your cross product, so you get 15x equals 900, x equals 60. What does that 60 mean? Again, if I were to plug it in here, oh, that's 60 books in a year. So she reads 60 books or novels read, either you could put annually or in a year. All right, so now I have one answer. But now I need to ask, how many do I have left? Well, to figure out left, what you must do is take what you're supposed to read in a year. So that means a year minus what I've read equals what I have left. All right, that means 60 minus my 9. I have 51 more books left to read. So don't panic. If you get a 2-question problem, first solve so that you have all your pieces. Then reread the second sentence. Say, what is it asking? Okay, now I see it. I have these two numbers. The year is the whole, so you got to subtract what you've done from what you're required or need to figure out what you have left. And the final piece that you could be looking for is your part. So again, this would pertain to like tax, tip, commission, depreciation, and the part is always next to the words is, had, this, was, things like that. So for these samples here, let's go ahead and pull out and see how you can tell the part is going to be the one that's missing. So again, percent is always the easiest because it has the percent sign. So go ahead and do that first. And then find the word of, all right, of 145 is what? Ooh, two pieces. It's next to the word and says is what. We don't know that. And remember, the question will always tell you what it's looking for. So now we just set it up using our proportion method. Part goes on top. So x over whole 145 equals 5% over 100. Okay, so when you cross multiply, you're going to have 100x equals 5 times 145. Once you have this and you have 5 times the 145, you must multiply those two numbers. And so then you'll get 725 equals 100x. At this point, you must get x by itself by division. So divide by 100, divide by 100. Remember, dividing by 100, since there's two zeros, that means move the decimal 2 places. So then x equals 7.25. What is 120% of 60? Notice the 120% is over 100%, which means the part should actually be bigger than the whole. So yes, sometimes that will be okay. If your percent is over 100, you check your answer by knowing that part should be larger than the actual whole. You got extra credit here. All right, so 120% of 60 is what is? Ooh, okay, that's where that goes. So we have the part is your x, that goes on top. The whole is 60 equals 120 over 100. Cross product, 100x equals 60 times 120. Now, when you multiply that, that gets 7,200 equals 100x. And then you need to divide by 100, divide by 100. Dividing by 100 is moving 2 place values left. So then x equals 72. This is the part. That means that 72 is 120% of 60. All right, let's say you got a word problem and you need to figure out if this word problem is asking for the whole, part, or percent. A word problem that's asking for a part will look like this. There are 60 questions on a test. You need 80% to get a B. How many do you need to get correct? How many can you miss? So this is a two-part question. So the first thing you want to pull out is, what do you have that tells you the whole? Well, the total number of questions is 60 questions on this test. And the lowest score you can get to get a B, which is a B minus, you need to get your 80%. So then it asks you two questions. Your first one is, how many do you need to get correct? That's a part. How many do you need to get missed? That's a part. So that's two different problems. So first we're going to figure out the correct. Okay, so what we have to do is put x over, because the missing and the correct, those are your x's. So this one here means correct. Over 60 equals 80 over 100. Now cross product, so it's 100x equals 60 times 80. Then when you multiply this, you should get 100x equals 4,800. 0 times 0, that's 2 zeros. 8 times 6, 48. Now you need to get x by itself, and so you divide by 100, divide by 100. X equals 48. What does that mean? That means you must get 48 out of 60 questions to get a B minus at 80% correct. So there's one answer. And again, word problems should have sentences for your homework. Next one says, well, how many can you miss? Well, keep in mind, if there's 60 questions total, 60 questions minus your correct equals your miss. All right, so if you had 60 questions minus you got 48 correct, then that means you can have up to 12 wrong answers. And then for a little challenge, on test 1, you got 84%, and on test 2, you got 96%. You want to get an average of 90%. What would you need to get on the third test? So this is an important thing for students to know when they're doing their test grades and they're trying to figure out what grade they want overall to average in the class. You would use this formula. So keep in mind, how do you compute average? Well, average is done by the sum of the values divided by the number of values you have. It's also known as the mean. So the average for this would be your test 1 plus your test 2 plus your test 3. So here's your given, divided by 3 total tests, 1, 2, 3. If there was 5, then you would be 5. So this bottom number pertains to how many values do you have. When you divide this, you'll get a decimal, and then you must times by 100 to get a percent. All right, so now let's plug in what we have. Now that we have our given, we're going to plug in. So my test 1, I got 84, plus my test 2, which was 96, plus my test 3, that's what's missing, so that's where the X goes, over 1, 2, 3 exams. Now that you have this here, what percent are you wanting? The percent you are wanting for this is 90%. So again, that would be 0.9 as your decimal. All right, well, how do we get 90%? Now that we have this, we want to combine these two numbers because you can see they are like terms. So when you combine them, you'll get 180 plus X, and then you'll have the 180 plus the X over 3 equals your 90. At this point, how do we get rid of the 3? To get rid of the 3, since it's divide by 3 times by 3. So then you get 180 plus X equals, remember, times by 3 times by 3 equals 270. Then how do you get X by itself now with inverse operation? Since it's positive 180, you subtract 180 from both sides. So once I subtract, I will see that on the third test, I need to still get 90% in order to average out 90% overall.